The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back, and if you are thinking that we are an hour late, then you're either listening from another part of the world or you forgot to change your clocks back last night. But it is 7 o'clock Eastern Time here in the U.S., as always, and we are here with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire, number 89. Overall, it is episode number 192 of the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. Yes, if you are watching on Twitch or on YouTube, you see I have updated the start times for both GMT and JST, as those are now 1 hour later. So if you catch us outside of the U.S., adjust your clocks accordingly. But, of course, got news headlines. We've got new music. We're talking the music of October the 10th today. And, of course, we're going to get into the vault. And then we will answer our question of the week with the Power Trio. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, remember to change his clocks, as always. How's it going, Mike?
Yeah, it's weird. I saw the moment when the time changed. Like, I'd actually fallen asleep and woke up, and I woke up, like, right at the time where I was like, oh, it's 1 o'clock again. That's great. Good weekend. I'm all for an extra hour. Good music this week, and as always, excited to talk about it.
I know talking about time changes is not necessarily a news topic for a music podcast, but this time change is always such I have mixed feelings about it because, like you said, the time goes back, so you get an extra hour of sleep, which is always great. The downside is it's now dark at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that just reminds you that winter is coming, and that's not a whole lot of fun. Like the people who talk about getting rid of daylight saving time just baffle me, because the idea of it being light past 9 o'clock in the evening in the summer is wonderful.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine giving that up.
I was under the impression if we were going to do that, we would just get rid of standard time and just stay that way.
I'd be down
perpetually.
for that.
To me, that's the logical way to handle it.
It is, because then you still have it's lighter in the afternoon, a little bit later. Obviously, it's still getting dark a little earlier.
Sunsets were already stupid early. Just a day ago. So
I mentioned I was out in Las Vegas, which, as we talked about, I think on the podcast, is on the far eastern side of the Pacific time zone. And because of that, when I was out there even just a couple weeks ago, it was getting dark at like 5 o'clock already. And it's just like, now they move back an hour, it's going to be even worse. And again, in Vegas, if you're in the middle of a casino, you don't realize what time it is or whether it's light or dark. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But I just remember a few years ago, I drove to Milwaukee and Green Bay for a weekend trip, drove through Chicago, and I got into Chicago at 4:30 in the afternoon, and it was dark. And it's just like, what is this? It's 4:30. This is afternoon. This is not nighttime, but that's what we deal with this time of year. So
it's one of those weird things that when you live on the west side of a time zone, you don't really consider.
Yeah.
But like if you're on the east side of it, things happen quick.
Yeah, for sure. And you see that in other places in the country. I just think of like Wimbledon, where they're able to play until like 9:30, 9:45, because they're clearly, wherever their time zone sits, it's kind of later, or on the far east side, so you get that extra daylight at night. So interesting anyway. But again, if you listen to us outside of the U.S. and you didn't change your clocks this weekend, this will be our normal time at least until March. So make your time adjustments. And obviously, if you listen to us on the VOD, doesn't matter what time it is right now, you can catch us anytime on YouTube and on Twitch. With all that said, and with all the time stuff explained, it is time to get into the news headlines. And, of course, we're going to start off, and I think I'll just share the picture in both of the chats, because as we promised, actually, it's not even going to let me because it's too big for the chat, the link for the picture. Thank you, Facebook. But we'll just paste the link instead. Sonic Temple, obviously, as anticipated, as we've talked about, has made their lineup announcements, and I will post the link to their Facebook page that has the graphic that has all of the bands that are going to be there. It is obviously quite the lineup. You can take that statement however you want, depending on how you feel about the lineup. But again, it is 4 days, and this year it is 5 stages, which are all split out on this graphic. Obviously we got a couple new headliners out of this that had not previously been announced, and over 100 bands, 140 I think bands that had not previously been confirmed that have now not only been confirmed but have also been confirmed for a stage and a date. It's interesting. And again, tickets are on sale. You can pick those up. They've got everything from your general admission to your super VIP packages, which range from $400 plus and up, well over $1,000 for the VIP stuff. So it's interesting, and Mike is going to, Mike has been kind of, as we've been going along, as the bands have been announced, has been giving kind of his ideal or his favorite or preferred grouping of the bands that have been announced. So we'll let him update that in a moment, and kind of talk a little bit about, maybe the stages that he's thinking about, spending some time at. For me, before we get to that specifics, I kind of want to speak in generalities, because I look at this, and to me, as someone who's a little more casual in my music fandom, I don't know if this is enough to make me want to spend $450 for general admission. Might I? Yeah, I might still. It's not definitely not like a no. I will definitely not be going. But there last year, obviously, you had Metallica, and that kind of gives you that moment where it's like, well, this is Metallica alone could be worth $450.
Yeah.
So you're getting your money's worth almost regardless of what else you see for that weekend. I don't know. There's a wide range of acts. Again, I still think there are definitely gaps in the type of bands that they're including. But I'm curious to get your thoughts generally first about the lineup, the concepts, what you kind of think as far as the value for your money, because it is a lot of bands, 160 or whatever.
You're going to get your money's worth no matter what you do, I think. I don't think it's possible to not, unless you're just stuck in traffic and can't get in. I mean, that's
a possibility.
That's really the only instance where you're not going to get value here.
Yeah.
I understand that you're not going to be able to book Metallica and Linkin Park every year as your headliners. I think that's fair.
For sure.
Korn's probably a little more possible, but even so, you can't look at the slate of headliners this year and say that it's on par with last year. I don't think.
No.
To me, Metallica's kind of on a level by themselves. There are very few bands that have reached the height that they have. So you look at My Chemical Romance, Shinedown, Bring Me the Horizon, and Tool. All big bands, all popular bands, but there's only one Metallica, really. And I think the circumstances around Linkin Park with how huge they were, and then obviously Chester's unfortunate passing, I think that elevates them to that kind of mythic status too, that when you saw them on the lineup card, you're like, okay, seeing them's kind of a big deal, I think. And it didn't necessarily do anything for me, but I can understand. I'm not going to take that away from them to suggest they're not headliner level, but
right.
This is a year that when I look down the sheet and the stages, there are times I question whether or not the headliner should be the headliner with the other bands that are out there. It's kind of interesting.
And again, I think the point you just made, I think it is important to emphasize, you almost have to take Metallica out of the discussion when you're comparing the headliners for any year to last year, because you had two nights that were taken up by the largest metal band of all time by a large factor. So you just have to remove them almost, because it's unfair unless you book them every year, which they probably don't want to do. You can't. So really, you're just comparing them to the other headliners and other headliners over the years, and I think that's where you just wonder. I mean, I know I'm sure Chris will join us at some point. I'm sure he's going to be very excited about Tool headlining Sunday. At My Chemical Romance on Thursday, we've talked about them. Shinedown on Friday, Bring Me the Horizon on Saturday. So, yeah, I think it would be an interesting exercise to go through and reorganize some of these stages to, okay, if I were putting this lineup together, this is who I would have headlining this stage, because I'm not sure the band they chose. And I'm not just talking about the main headlining stage, but the other stages. I'm not sure if they got it right necessarily for what I would enjoy if I was going there.
And honestly, I don't even know the full logic behind it, because when I look down at the fifth stage, I feel like some of those acts are bigger than some of the things on the fourth stage. So I don't know if there even is any kind of hierarchy once you get to stages 3, 4, and 5, or if that's just, hey, we got stages, let's put bands on them. I don't really know for sure.
That's fair.
Because I see something like Behemoth, Cradle of Filth, and Dying Fetus. That to me feels bigger than Dayseeker, Magnolia Park, Catch Your Breath, Holding Absence. That's just my opinion. I could be off base because I'm not. My finger isn't on the pulse of all things, every subgenre of metal. It's just not. But I kind of went through it and looked each day and kind of thought, what's the stage that I think is my best value? The one that I'm probably going to want to spend my time at. And honestly, Thursday was difficult. Like, it's hard to find a front runner there because there are certainly bands on every stage. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing them or them. And I'm not a huge My Chemical Romance guy, so their headlining doesn't like jump out at me as, hey, this is must see. All that being said, I still kind of think the main stage takes the prize here for Thursday. Between My Chemical Romance, All Time Low, Coheed and Cambria, Hawthorne Heights, Red Jumpsuit Apparatus. Like, there's nothing. The combination of all of those, I don't think there's anything on the other stages that kind of matches that. Like, Breaking Benjamin's fine, so is Rise Against the Used, Fozzy. Cradle of Filth, I'm a fan of, but a lot of that stage I probably wouldn't really enjoy, so it's hard to take that one. So I think for Thursday, I would go with the main stage.
Yeah, and I think, as I look at the main stage on Thursday, to me, and I would agree, I think if you're asking me to make a pick, I would definitely pick the main stage on Thursday. To me, there is something missing from that stage. There's another band, I don't know which band, I'm just hypothetically saying, that would be another one of those bands that's kind of like MCR that was really popular, and I know they're hits.
Yeah.
But, like, maybe they're not the headliner, but, like, I would see if I was at a stage. Like, I feel like there's, one more of those bands that could have went there that I think would have kind of made that a no-brainer.
Like, they don't have the Godsmack to Sunday's main stage on Thursday. They don't have that band, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Duddy Swan dropping in on the chat. Always good to hear from him. I just, for whatever reason, I think that something is missing off of that. I mean, honestly, I'd stick a band like Fozzy in. Just, again, they're not that they're worthy of being on the main stage there, but, like, I feel like that would be that band that's like, I don't know if I would go see them on their own at this point, but I would, if they were kind of in this lineup with those bands, I think that would, you get a little extra value there. But, again,
yeah, that's fair.
I also wonder, Thursday, maybe some people not able to get in on Thursday. So, not to say this is a weaker lineup on purpose, but maybe, you backload the lineup a little bit. The people who want to be there will be there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to Friday. Friday's a little stronger, I think, overall. I think you got some main acts on each stage that are worthy of checking out. Shinedown, obviously. Offspring on stage 2. I'm honestly, though, looking at stage 5, I think, as far as just pure the amount of bands I would like to see. Obviously, Zakk Wylde is Zach Sabbath show. Seven Dust, Static X, Dope, Power Man 5000, Mushroom Head, Soil, and Flaw. I mean, Power Man 5000's classic. I would love to see them live. Static X and Dope, obviously, kind of tied together with the lead singer, but I think I would take that over stage 2. I'm a fan of The Offspring, but beyond that, I wouldn't mind seeing Lit, but I'm not really interested in Sublime, Yellow Card, or Newfound Glory, or Everclear.
To me, if you take The Offspring and you swap them with Stained,
okay,
I think I spend my time up on the main stage if that's the lineup.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because I would want to see Buck Cherry.
Buck Cherry's good live. I've seen Hinder. They're good.
Yeah, Daughtry would be unoffensive. Like, STP, obviously, Hailstorm. It feels like Stain is like the odd one out there in that, and Shinedown would be fine. Like, if you had seen the other bands,
the kind of band that you'd walk away from saying, they're better than I realized.
Yeah,
because so much of their career is kind of fallen under my radar. Like, I'm aware of them, I know some of their songs, but I probably have not given them the listen they deserve over the years.
Yeah, so to me, that's the problem, and I could see where the stage 5 would make a lot of sense in that for that reason. Because other than the Offspring, I don't like. If Sublime was with some of those other stage 1 acts, would I sit through them? Probably, but the rest of them I don't really have any interest in. So I think that's the only flaw I see in Friday's lineup is you swap those two, and I think that main stage would be a must stay. Otherwise, I could see the stage 5 being or just what would legitimately happen, probably bouncing around. So let's get to Saturday.
So Saturday, I've not really listened to much Bring Me the Horizon, so that, Good Charlotte I wouldn't mind seeing, obviously. They're a classic, but looking down the list for Saturday, I'm looking at stage 2.
Okay.
Marilyn Manson, Bush, Alter Bridge, Tom Morello, Coal Chamber, All That Remains. Even though I'm not really a fan of anything Bush has done, their most recent album didn't really do much for me. I think historically, I've enjoyed their music. Alter Bridge is classic, and Marilyn Manson's one of those artists that I wouldn't mind just to say I've seen him live. So, uh, you know, there's really nothing else that day that stands up to that. I don't think.
I would agree, and I would also say that if I felt like I needed a day to recover from Friday, which looks like a really good lineup, I would be leaning towards skipping Saturday.
Yeah.
Because not that again, you wouldn't see some good bands, but like there's just nothing on that lineup that you feel like I really have to see these guys. Like again, if I'm there, yeah, I think stage 2 is probably the way to go, but when I compare it to, Friday and Sunday, that would be the day that I think, maybe I go do something else in Columbus on that Saturday. But yeah, I think the rest of the stages are definitely, to me, weaker than what you're getting on stage 2.
So moving on to Sunday, I think there's just an obvious choice for me as far as my taste goes, and it kind of reminds me of last year. There was the Friday stage, the main stage that I basically camped at all day because you had Overkill, Exodus, Testament, Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, Metallica, and that's stage 2 on Sunday. You got
Yeah.
Megadeth, Public Enemy, Amon Amarth, Anthrax, In Flames, Demon Hunter. For Megadeth, Amon Amarth, Anthrax, and In Flames alone, I think that takes the prize. There are some other bands I wouldn't mind checking out. Obviously, Dragon Force, Ailstorm, but and then on the main stage, Avatar would be fine, I'm sure. And I don't. It's not that I wouldn't want to see Tool or Godsmack, but if you're comparing that to Megadeth, I don't think that really stands up. And I've seen Lamb of God before, so
Yeah, I'm with you there. Stage 2, there would be maybe a couple acts there that I would bounce out to another stage during, but for the most part, that's the best of the stage. So, yeah, it's again, I think it's gonna sell really well. I think people are gonna be really happy. There's the initial reaction when any festival lineup is listed is always about the people that aren't there and not about the people that
Yeah.
are there. When you get closer and people start getting excited for it, then the discussion becomes about who you want to see that's going to be there. There's no hypotheticals anymore at that point, and then people I think will get psyched for the lineups.
yeah. And I just think there's some bands that have already put their touring plans in mind, and they're not going to halt that just to come to Columbus, Ohio, necessarily. So the fact that they're able to get the depth of bands that they can get every year, and some of the names they get, it's impressive. And maybe not to the degree of last year as far as the headliners go, but I still think there's going to be something for everyone there.
Yeah, I think so. And probably a good time for me to post the link to our Discord in the chat because you can come and tell us who are the bands you're most excited to see. Are you going to get tickets for the festival? And, since we're still obviously really early on in the discussion, we haven't gotten to the maybe excitement portion of the timeline. Is there a band that potentially you just were hoping would be there and for whatever reason they're not there? Let us know in the Discord. And again, not an easy task to put together a festival lineup. So kudos to them for putting together a good one. It's just you're never going to make everybody happy, and you're never going to be able to schedule everybody you want. So overall, I think they did a good job. I think it's as we get closer, I think the excitement will build for it. And again, we're talking about May of next year, so that is both still a ways away and not as far away as it probably feels like sometimes since we're already on to November. But that's our news headlines for today. Reminder to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Of course, we are on social media pretty much everywhere. We're on Twitch and YouTube. That's where you're hearing us now if you're watching us live on one of those two platforms. And we're with you every Sunday night. And again, if you're outside of the U.S., if your time did not change, we are now an hour later than we were last week, and we'll be at this time from now until March when our time changes again and we move back forward again. But it is time to get to our new music of the week. Of course, each and every week, Mike will go through and pull the new releases for a given date. That given date in question this time is October the 10th. He will pull at least one track off of each of those brand new albums to review We go through and review them. We each pick 2 new albums to spotlight on this podcast, and then we discuss them and play those tracks off of those albums on the podcast. Yeah, another really good week. Yeah, again, an interesting week. Definitely some interesting stuff out there. Before we get to our picks, Mike, was there anything in the collections and large acts department that stood out on this week's list?
Yeah, there were quite a few somewhat major acts that released albums. We got a new one from All Time Low, who will be at Sonic Temple next year. Their newest album, Everyone's Talking. We have Arch Enemy with the deluxe edition of Blood Dynasty. Foxy Shazam, local band. Used to be customers of Blockbuster. They have released their 10th studio album, Box of Magic. John Five, great guitarist, currently playing with Motley Crue. He released his solo album, Ghost. The 14th studio album from the band Testament came out, Parabellum, which is really solid. Just another strong release from that band. Definitely worth checking out. As far as re-releases and box sets, the only thing I really saw was the Sweet album Live at the Marquee re-release. That's really about it. So something for you, but not a lot.
I was hoping to go back and listen to the Foxy Shazam one. Easy for me to say. They, like you said, they are local, so kind of cool to see them continuing on and doing well. And got to listen to a little bit of the track on the playlist, and it sounds fine. So if you're a fan of their old stuff, you probably already have their album.
Definite glam rock Queen inspiration there.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely worth giving a listen to.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely check that out. And of course, we encourage you to check out Mike's playlist, because everybody has different music tastes, and the stuff that we like might not be the stuff that you like. So you can go through and basically get a sample of every album that's released that are on the playlists that we have that you can check out to see if there's something on there that you like. So definitely do that each and every week. We definitely encourage that. But it's time to get to the stuff we did like, the stuff that we are picking for this podcast. And Mike, you will kick us off with an artist that both of us are big fans of the work he's done. We've talked about him before on this podcast, but what do you have for pick number 1 this week?
Yeah, so for pick number 1, we have an artist who we featured back on the August 16th, 2024 music episode. It's the 7th full-length album from this Russian progressive metal artist. He is Egor Lappo, and the album is Skyline.
Yeah, I mean, I knew when, I think you told me maybe a week or two ago that he had something new coming out. I knew that was going to end up on our podcast, for one of us was going to pick him, but really talented guy, and really excited to dig into this new album.
Yeah, great album. Definitely worth a listen. Yeah, I was excited when I saw his name pop up, because I know anytime we have someone pop up again that we've picked before, I can at least expect some quality there, and this one definitely didn't disappoint. As I was listening to it, I pulled up a review on the Metal Rules website on this album. It's kind of interesting, because when I listen to Egor Lappo's stuff over the last 2 albums, I just think this is kind of pop-infused progressive rock and metal. Like, it's catchy, but it's still got the musicianship of what I would want from prog metal. But reading the review on Metal Rules, yeah, he was trying to find the correct labels to really describe Egor Lappo's music. Like, he didn't really want to call it metal, but to me, it is still, just because of the soloing involved and just the musicianship that he has. But at first, the reviewer was comparing it to more like pop rock, or maybe like pop metal, I think was the term he first used. And he kind of compared it, wondering if that meant it sounded like old Bon Jovi, and he kind of got away from that. But it brings up an interesting point as far as how you define what you're listening to. But to me, it's progressive pop metal, and that's not a bad thing. I think I'm a big fan of melody and music in general, so anytime you can play with the proficiency, I mean, this is Egor Lappo is playing everything here. He's a one-man progressive rock monster, so the fact you can do all that and still do it at that high of level, but still write something that's accessible, there's no real barrier to entry here. I think that's amazing. His first album came out back in 2018, but if you do a YouTube search on him, you'll find videos going back as far as like 12 years ago, where he's playing guitar parts from different prog songs. That there was like a Dream Theater video that he did, Between the Buried and Me. I think I saw something on there too. But he even also contributed to a cover from the game Undertale, like a music cover, one of the pieces from that game. So dude's been around a while. Dude's super talented, and Definitely worth more listens than what I see when I look him up on YouTube Music. Standout tracks on the album include Never Look Back, One More Day, When Was the Last Time, Hold This Spark, and the track that we picked to listen to, the title track, Skyline.
Yeah, let's check this out. Egor Lappo with his new album, Skyline. This is the title track, the 8th track off of this album, Skyline. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
You know, the skyline's gonna fade away. Don't stop calling my name, calling my name. Someday, the skyline's gonna fade away. We're still playing this game, and counting the stars while dreaming of times when spirits are free. It's just you and me, and counting the stars while dreaming of times when spirits are free. It's just you and me.
Yeah, just really impressed as I was on the last album that we talked about on the podcast with the talent. And, it's more than just being able to do everything, but it's also, having the ability to write good songs and
Yeah.
be able to come up with something that's interesting, because it's one thing to be that talented, but it's another thing to actually produce something people want to hear. And he just does an amazing job of that. So it always blows me away to hear the complexity of the music that he puts together.
Yeah, and the fact that he's able to do it kind of in the turnaround time that he has. I mean, his album we talked about last year was, 13 months ago, 14 months ago,
Yeah.
something like that. So, yeah, it's just really cool and always looking to support artists who are putting out music like this.
Yeah, for sure. We always really enjoy coming across artists like him or just more stuff from him. I would really be excited to continue to see him doing really cool music. So definitely check out the new one from Egor Lappo, out as of October the 10th. As always, you have 2 new picks each and every week. What do you have for pick number 2?
Pick number 2 jumped out at me the second I saw it when I was putting together the playlist. I think anytime we can kind of revisit a theme that maybe is underused in the world of metal and hard rock, I think we have to talk about it. So that being said, my second pick is the second full-length album from a Canadian heavy speed metal band. They are Ültra Raptör, and the album is Fossilized.
Yeah, sometimes you just see a band name or an album cover and just think, yeah, this definitely needs to get my attention. And if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, you can see the album cover, and obviously if you're not, you can gather it on from the name of it. But
Yeah.
definitely a standout act this week.
Yeah, so it's been about a year, not since we talked about Egor Lappo, even though it was, but it's also been about a year since we last talked about a dinosaur metal band. That was Australia's Nucleosaurus Rex and their EP Operation Party Destroy.
I love that.
It came out back on November 15th, 2024. So obviously when this showed up on the playlist, I'm like, all right, more dinosaurs. If there's one thing, I think when you're young, like there are things that you believe to be true that as you get older, you realize aren't. If there's one thing as a kid that is true, that remains true your entire life, dinosaurs are awesome. They just are.
They are.
I mean, there's no question about that. I don't even know where to start with these guys. Well, you got dinosaurs. You got the really cool logo that looks like something you would have drawn on a notebook back in 1985, complete with the umlauts, which is just a great touch. You got a band of guys who go by pseudonyms because why not?
Of course.
The band consists of Samuel Pare as Chris Raptor on guitars, Phil Lavoie or Phil T. Lung on vocals, Alexander Chouinard as Dick Von Hess on bass, Antoine Pellerin as Tony Bronco on drums, and Romano Kisrabata as Zoltan Soros on guitars. They've been around since 2015. Metal Archives lists their musical themes as Xenozoic Tales, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, throwback there, and fantasy. At the end of the day, this is just really fun traditional metal. Their Bandcamp lists their influences as Savage Grace, Early Running Wild, Judas Priest, Rage, Exciter, Early Angel Dust, and Sabotage. If it's one thing that I think this year's been big about, that maybe I certainly didn't know prior to the podcast, and probably didn't know as well for the first year of the podcast, is just how many bands there are out there, fairly modern bands, doing traditional metal.
Mhm.
I think there's been a huge resurgence of bands who've only been around maybe 10, 15 years that are really championing this style. And these guys are no different, even if they're doing it with a certain amount of humor as far as singing about dinosaurs. But, you know, I think there are enough bands out there where kind of having a gimmick probably isn't a bad thing because that'll distinguish yourself. And it's a really strong album and worth a listen. Standout tracks on it include Spinosaurus, Living for the Riff, Accelerator, Feel the Power, Down the Drain, Face the Challenge, and the track that I picked to listen to, the title track, Fossilized.
Check these guys out now. This is Ültra Raptör with their new album, Fossilized. This is the opening track and the title track, Fossilized. Let's listen to a little bit of this now.
Layers of organic ash, the pages of time. Millions of years crystallized for us to unearth. Fossilized, unfolding marks on a buried past, petrified as a bone stirred into stone. Left behind, forever printed to the soul. Fossilized, sediments of the origins of life.
Yeah, I couldn't cut off that guitar part there after the chorus. 100%. The thing you said about finding out that this type of music is out there and really not knowing that people were still doing this type of music is definitely one of the joys of doing this podcast, because there's no reason that there shouldn't be bands out there doing this type of music, but until you find it, until you come across it, you just think, well, that type of music died, many years ago. Not only these guys are doing it, but they're putting their whole heart and soul into this, and on top of the gimmick and everything else. So it's really the perfect combination of just really awesome things that just makes for a really great album.
Yeah, it's interesting because I assume that this stuff has been going on since even back when it was popular and after it was popular, but we live in an era now where you can find all this stuff online so easily. You just have to look for it. You may not have these like centralized scenes for it, or if you did, no one's going to tell you about it, but through Bandcamp and really any of the websites that really put out these new releases for people to find, like, that's kind of how you build that scene again, because no one's going to tell you about it on television or the radio. You have to put in the legwork, but it's all out there.
It is, and it's just a matter of hunting it down and finding it and supporting it. I think that's the next step, is buy the album, see them in concert, follow their websites, repost their stuff. Like, all that stuff's going to help these guys keep going. So really cool stuff from Ültra Raptör. Definitely worth checking that one out. Mike's second pick this week. One thing I want to point out before I get to my picks is I have finally learned how to figure out when there's an ad coming up on Twitch. It turns out there's a panel for that. So if you're watching on Twitch live with us, when we get to the ad break, we will stop our content and chat for a little bit about something to kill the time until our 90-second ad run. So if you're here, don't worry, you're not going to miss anything. You're not going to get cut off in the middle of a song, hopefully, going forward, now that I know how to see that. We've now figured it out. Welcome, Chris. Yes, all hail the panel indeed. I could see how to start an ad, but I couldn't figure out how to find when the ad was coming up. So we've got about 5 minutes, so I have time to get to my first pick before we have that ad. As always, I have two picks as well. We're going to be starting off with a Swedish rock quartet, actually a pair of quartets on my picks this week. This is Andy and the Rockets with their new album, Casino. This is a band that's been around a little while. They started in 2012. They are made up of Andreas Forsland on lead vocals and guitars, Robin Lagerquist on lead guitars and backing vocals, Philip Westgards on bass, and Max Markusson on drums. This is going to be unshocking, but rockposer.com said this was a band for those who like Eclipse, Heat, or Crazy Licks. We like all those bands. We've talked about all of those bands on this podcast, so unsurprisingly, I really enjoyed this album. I think it's a little harder than your standard melodic rock, which is not too surprising. There are some AOR qualities in there, but I don't think it's just a straight AOR release. It definitely is harder than that. The website lists a wide range of influences, from like Elvis Presley to, bands of the 80s and 90s. Like, these guys clearly have very eclectic music taste. They call their music a modern rock show with sporadic glimpses back to the 70s. I think that's probably a pretty fitting way to look at it. This was a lot of times we go through these. I think we even mentioned it specifically with one band last week where it's like, well, this website didn't like this. All the reviews I found for this album were really positive. People really liked this album. So if you're a fan of melodic hard rock, especially a little bit on the harder side, I definitely encourage you to check this out. I really enjoyed this album. Standout tracks include I'll Die If You're Done, Cyanide, Wild Ones, and the song we're going to check out on the podcast is I'm Alive. So let's check this out now. It's Andy and the Rockets with their new album, Casino. This is the opening track off of that album, I'm Alive. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
We were way too young back then. Now we do it all over again. I don't want this night to end. Round and round, up and down. I don't wanna go. I don't wanna go. I don't wanna take a left, take a right. I do anything you want tonight. I don't wanna go. I don't wanna go. Oh no.
Cut you off there before the guitar solo. Yeah, just really enjoyed it. Great melodic sound. But again, a little bit harder than your typical melodic rock band, which I really dug. Mike, your thoughts on Andy and the Rockets?
Yeah, it almost veers more into like the pop metal side as opposed to like AOR or what you might find with Frontiers. It's kind of on the heavier end of that spectrum, maybe. But yeah, really, really nice polished sound. I mean, it sounded professional, and obviously it is. But like, I can't think of a better way to describe just the level of polish that I heard there.
Yeah, and I think that's what can set a lot of these releases out is that level of polish when you have something that sounds like it's just really well produced because, again, we hear all types on these podcasts. So definitely check those guys out, Andy and the Rockets, their new release out this week. We're about 2 minutes from a scheduled ad break, so we're going to go ahead and take that ad break now. Mike and I will chat for a little bit, and as soon as this ad break finishes running, we will get back and talk a little bit about my second pick for this week. So we are in the process of running that ad, I believe, at this time, and now that ad is running, and it actually gives me a countdown for when it's in progress. So new technology.
Can we create like commercial bumpers like leading into the ad? Like,
I mean, we could in theory. I don't know how our YouTube listeners will feel because they're obviously not getting ads over on YouTube because we're not monetized over on YouTube. But yeah, I guess in theory we could do some sort of fancy bumpers leading
That would be
into.
awesome.
Stay tuned. Well, now that we're figuring all this stuff out, it's an interesting technology. But it was really, as we looked through the music this week, there were a lot of interesting sounds, I think, and that's the thing that's kind of stood out over the past few weeks. We haven't really had that surge of like power metal or that surge of melodic metal. There've been a couple here and there, but it feels like the variety of the descriptions that you've given about some of these bands have been all over the place, honestly, which is always interesting because it's like when I read your description, I'm interested to hear what it actually sounds like when you get there.
Yeah, I've been trying to be as like liberal as possible with moving things on to that next round just because, early on in the list especially, I don't know how many I'm going to like out of all this stuff. So anything that I feel like there's some potential here, I'm going to go ahead and send through, put some sort of description that I think makes the most sense, and then see where it goes from there. And some of these I get back to and listen to a little more of, and it doesn't really do it for me. But I don't want to potentially miss something because I might have picked the wrong track for the playlist.
Yeah, for sure. It's always an interesting, trying to figure out exactly what to pick and trying to make it as much about what the band actually sounds like. But welcome back for those who were in ads. Again, you didn't miss a thing.
That was fast.
It was fast. 90 seconds doesn't take very long, I can tell you for sure. So we've got a little time for our next ad, so it's time to get to my second pick. And we are another four-piece band. This one from Cambridge, England. This band is The Hot 1-2, and their new album is Virtues. This is another band that's just got a really great sound. They were founded in 2017 by their bassist, Nick Blackburn. He joined up with Nick Manners and Joe Chivers, the lead guitarist and the drummer. And then they needed a front man. In 2018, they found Simon West. and really kind of took off from there. Some comments that they kind of listed on their website. The band blends the swagger of 80s rock legends with the punch of modern metal, creating a sound that's both familiar and electrifying. They found a way to make that classic rock sound just again, kind of you have that kind of throwback, but at the same time it feels modern, which is always really what we're looking for. It doesn't sound dated in any way. It's guitar-driven classic rock at its finest with some AOR undertones. I think the track that we're going to listen to really drives that point home. While they talk about having that 80s sound, I really feel like some of their songs had more of a mid to late 90s vibe to them. That, and again, I like music from both of those eras. So that's not meant to be negative in any way. Just I felt like there was maybe some later influences there as well. It's a great album, and it flies by. 38 minutes, and you're in and out. And it's just an album like so much of this stuff that just makes you feel good. And I think we all want to listen to music that makes us feel good, and I think this album really achieves that. Standout tracks include The Reaper, Let the Good Times Roll, Saint Restraint, and the song we're going to listen to. We're keeping the Alive theme going. We had I'm Alive from our first band and Alive Again from the Hot 1-2. So let's check this out. The Hot 1-2 with their new album Virtues is the second track off of that album, Alive Again. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, really good stuff from them. To answer Chris's question, Let the Good Times Roll, not a Cars cover. A shame, honestly, 'cause that's a great song, but their version of that song, different song, the same name, really good as well. But that song in particular, I felt more of a 90s, maybe even early 2000s vibe to the vocals of that rather than an 80s sound. But otherwise, it's a really great album, and again, it's a pretty short one. You can get through it pretty fast. Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
My thoughts on that song in particular, it felt like a mid-2000s band covering Your Love by The Outfield.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, that was kind of what that's what it hit me as right there. But, no, I mean, good blend of styles there. All for anything that drifts back towards the 80s. But, yeah, it didn't sound dated or anything. So I need to listen to the rest of that album. I think that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Definitely check those guys out. The Hot 1-2, my second pick for this week. That's our new music for this week. It's time to get to the vault, where Mike and I will each give you a classic album you need to check out. Mike is he's probably got a couple of gimmicks kind of starting to intertwine, but the gimmick that he's kind of been on the last few weeks is he's a world traveler. He's going around the world to find rock and metal albums from all over the planet, and the random country generator hasn't necessarily been kind to you overall. At least you had a full week this time and not just a short week, and probably good based on the country you got. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about where you were off to this week, because again, it was not an easy one by any stretch.
No, and I've had some issues over the weeks pulling countries that maybe aren't known for their depth of hard rock and metal production. Also interesting, and I didn't think about this when I got the random picker last week, and it gave me the country it did. I didn't realize at the time, but there are only 5 communist countries in the world, apparently, according to Google. Out of like 193 UN-recognized countries, there are 5 communist ones. They're the obvious ones that you think of immediately: your Chinas, your Cubas, your North Koreas.
But you haven't gotten any of those.
I haven't gotten those 3 yet, but there are 2 others, and I have visited both of them now. A few weeks ago, I took a trip to Vietnam, and this week the randomizer picked Laos for me, which is the 5th of the 5 communist nations. Not a lot of heavy metal there. I'm not gonna lie. Metal Archive showed 9 bands from Laos, 6 of which were active, 1 split up, 1 unknown status, and 1 on hold. 7 of those bands were listed as brutal death metal bands. Not really my style. It is worth noting that a lot of those bands had the same members in them, and not a lot of releases across the board. One band was listed as black/death metal, and there was one listed as thrash metal, which is the one I went with.
Fair enough.
Out of those 9 bands, according to Metal Archives, their total production has not been impressive. We have, across all 9 bands, 3 full-length albums, 4 EPs, 1 split album, 7 demos, and 2 singles.
Wow.
So even with that amount of bands, not a lot of albums to choose from.
And again, we have no idea how easy or hard it is to produce an album in Laos.
No idea.
You know, I would have to think probably not the most technologically forward country, and probably not a place where you have thriving record labels that are willing to get metal music out.
Yeah. Which then brings me to what I ended up picking, because I kind of wonder what the theme of that is. And you look at the cover art, you look at the name of the band, you just think that this feels maybe potentially anti-government. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I went with a thrash metal band, which I mentioned, and that band is Dictator. Found that they had a self-titled EP that came out in 2015. So that is what I went with, Dictator and their EP Dictator.
Probably not just a clever name in this case.
Yeah, if you look at the cover art, it looks like, you know, what you'd expect an album from a band called Dictator would sound or would look like. Spirit of Metal states that the band got together in 2012 and are broken up, while Metal Archives lists their status as unknown. One thing about this band is Metal Archives didn't really mention these guys being in any other bands. So clearly these guys were the guys who just didn't want to do brutal death metal. The band is made up of Doc on bass, Sam on drums, Pac on guitars, and Tallow on vocals. The EP's 4 tracks long. The tracks are Ingratiate, No Victim, Fatherland, and Crush 'Em, which is sadly not a Megadeth cover. You know, if you're into crossover thrash, that's kind of how I feel about this. Vocals are kind of hardcore punkish, not death or black metal vocals, but not the cleanest. It's not Joey Belladonna singing. For a first release, it's raw, but you know, I could definitely hear some potential there, and would have wondered what subsequent releases from these guys could have sounded like. You know, I found basically a file on YouTube that had the entire EP in one file, so I don't even know how easy it would be to get a hold of this EP, unfortunately. But yeah, this is what I was able to find in the country of Laos, and I don't know what's next.
My fear and my hope is that these guys, they could potentially have had to go into hiding after releasing this album, especially based on, as you said, the cover art feels very anti-government, which is generally frowned upon in those countries. So have to think that probably, and you know, using the names that they used, I would
sound
think,
like pseudonyms.
Yeah,
they don't sound like that's no one's given name.
Yeah, so my guess is it would be hard to track them down, but no, I mean, it's the fact you were able to find something that was relatively all right in a country like Laos is a pretty impressive exercise. So.
Mission accomplished, kind of.
Mission accomplished. So, are you planning on continuing through countries next week, or are you going to jump into your Sonic Temple?
Well, and that's the question now, is that I kind of have a secondary vault concept in mind where I'll basically pick a band that I've not listened to before from the Sonic Temple lineup and check them out and see if I can add them to the list of bands I want to see at Sonic Temple next year. I think I may alternate, so maybe next week we'll start with the Sonic Temple, and then we'll jump back to a country, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll look forward to learning about some of these Sonic Temple bands, and maybe that'll build people's excitement even more for what they're going to get.
Should I go ahead and pick a country for 2 weeks from now?
We can do that if you want to go ahead and do that. That'll give you 2 weeks to
regret everything.
Regret everything. But yeah, so this will be for 2 weeks from now, so that is the show on the 16th of November, Eastern Time. So if you're doing metal in one of these countries that Mike picks, you have 2 weeks to find out whether he's going to pick your band. And again, if Mike picks somebody that we can't find anybody for, we could always do a repick next week, I guess. That's the one advantage of doing it 2 weeks at a time. So What do you have for the
Let's do
random
it.
country generator? He's pushing the button, and we are.
Oh, come on.
Well, it's a good thing he's got 2 weeks to find out what this country is going to hold, and we'll find out very shortly how many bands there might be in this country to see whether it's even a worthy pick. But
I mean, if I was a rock band, I would love to sing about the Serengeti and Mount Kilimanjaro. So,
you got Toto.
Yeah. So maybe I'll find a metal band or a hard rock band in Tanzania.
Tanzania. Yeah, so very interesting. Curious what Metal Archives will say about the metal population of Tanzania. So, yeah, I mean, if you're from Tanzania and you haven't done a cover of Africa, you know, you literally have the Serengeti right there. Like, why would you not do that and take advantage of that?
This is the first time that I've run into a country that's not listed in Metal Archives.
Oh, wow. So maybe you should have to pick a backup then.
Yeah, I could do that. And I'll still search and see if I can find something outside of Metal Archives because, you know, they're not necessarily a be-all, end-all.
Sure, that's fair.
Um,
It is a little concerning that
Yeah.
we found 9 bands in Laos. I mean,
nothing in Tanzania.
nothing in Tanzania.
man.
So if Mike is unable to find something in Tanzania, where are we going to go to next? Oh, wow. Boy, the random country generator is just not going to make this easy for you.
I feel like it has a bias toward picking African nations.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of African nations.
That's true. So should I not find anything in Tanzania,
Guess we need
make
to-
sure I know how to spell it.
Yeah. Not to be confused with Papua New Guinea.
Which would be an option probably. There probably is something. Well, maybe not. Man.
Is there even anybody in Guinea? If not, you might as well just go ahead and pick up another backup because,
Yeah, nothing there.
yeah,
Gre-
so
Greenland, Guadalupe, Guam, Guatemala, Guernsey, Guyana.
we need to, Chris, when we form our band, we need to form it in Tanzania or Guinea, as it turns out that there is also not metal bands. So Mike has picked another backup. Are there any metal bands in this country?
Yeah, we have 7 listed.
All right, that's an option now. So if you can't go to Tanzania, where are you headed in 2 weeks?
I'll be headed to lovely Kuwait.
Kuwait. What does it say about Kuwait on the website? What are we know it's like oil rich, but
Golf country known for its modern skyline, rich history, vibrant culture, delicious cuisine, and hospitable people.
I'm almost 100% certain these are written by AI.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like these descriptions, you can just write some of the stuff about every country in the world. But so it'll either be Tanzania or Kuwait coming up in 2 weeks, but it'll be a Sonic Temple band coming up next week on the Vault. So definitely stick around
Good
for
times.
that. We're about 4.5 minutes away from another ad, so I'm going to go ahead and run that ad now. So if you're watching live on Twitch, you're going to get a 90-second ad, and then we'll come back and finish up my Vault pick, and we'll get to our question of the week. So stick around for that. And if you're watching anywhere else, stay with us because we'll chat a little bit, but we'll go ahead and get this ad out of the way so that hopefully we can run to the end without any more commercial breaks. The ad is in progress now, but Random Country Generator not doing you any favors. That is some really tough picks. I mean, we've had really very few big countries so far.
Yeah, no, where's the Germany? Where's Spain, Italy, any Norwegian country because you're a Scandinavian country because they have plenty of metal up there.
It makes you wonder when you get one of those countries what route you go, because obviously when you get Germany, there's going to be so many to choose from that it almost becomes maybe more difficult because you have this wealth of bands to pick from.
Yeah, you almost want to find a way to kind of strike out any of the bands who are affiliated with bands or people that you already know, just to
Yeah.
get something totally fresh. That may be a lot of extra work, but I think that's what I would like to do. So if I ever get a country where that's even remotely possible.
Yeah, what an interesting exercise this has been. And it is definitely, I mean, there's no debating that it is very random, because if it wasn't, you'd be getting some of the, at least every once in a while, be getting a United States.
It almost
or
feels
Canada.
like it's rigged to pull me countries that are going to be difficult.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting exercise for sure. And Again, we'll alternate that. That'll be coming up in 2 weeks. We'll find out whether it'll be Tanzania or Kuwait that Mike will be getting a band from. So make sure you come back every week, but obviously in 2 weeks to find that out. In the meantime, it is time to get to my vault pick now that we are finished with that ad on Twitch. And we're on to the letter O. Frontiers bands is the topic if you have maybe not joined us before. And O only had one band. Not O, Q, excuse me. I didn't change my letter up there. Q only had one band, so we're only going to spend 1 week on the letter Q. And the band is a band that was formed in 1983. It is Q5. Definitely an interesting band. They've been around for a while, and the album we're going to talk about is New World Order. The band was formed back in 1983 from members of two popular Seattle bands, vocalist Jonathan Kay and guitarist and famous guitar tremolo inventor Floyd Rose, who that is really the most noteworthy thing about this band. They joined up with Rick Pierce, Evan Shealy, and Gary Thompson to form this band. They released their first album in 1984, Steal the Light, Music for Nations. They ended up touring with Twisted Sister, Y&T, and Lita Ford. It allowed them to sign with Polygram/Squawk Records in 1985 for their release, When the Mirror Cracks. They disbanded in 1987, so they did kind of get a lot of the members back around as a group called Nightshade, released a handful of albums as Nightshade, but when Frontiers came calling, they got back together as Q5, put together the lineup, which had Jonathan Scott Kay as vocals, Rick Pierce on lead guitars and rhythm guitars, Evan Shealy on bass guitars, Jeffrey McCormick on drums and percussion, and they brought in Dennis Turner to fill in on guitars and background vocals to kind of round out the act. It's an album that sounds like two albums in one. They clearly have different vocalists, and I think it's Jonathan Scott Kay who has the songs that sound a little bit more like AC/DC songs. They were fine. I'm not a huge AC/DC guy, so that didn't really resonate with me as much. But the rest of their stuff kind of sounds like new wave of British heavy metal, and I really enjoyed that sound a lot more. Obviously, Floyd Rose, we mentioned, a legendary figure in music, really more so than his involvement in this band originally for the locking tremolo system, developed in the 1970s. Obviously, it was listed as Guitar World's one of their 10 most earth-shaking guitar innovations, understandably so. The band hasn't released anything since this 2016 album, but they do still tour. They've had dates both in the Pacific Northwest and in Europe here in 2025. But if you're a fan of classic rock, definitely worth checking those guys out. Standout tracks include New World Order, Halfway to Hell, A Prisoner of Mine, and Just One Kiss. Overall, it was fine. For a band I didn't know anything about, obviously finding out the Floyd Rose was involved in this band originally, just kind of wild because I would have not even put the connection together had I not had to choose this band because it was the only Q band on the list.
Yeah, no, I don't normally think of any namesake hardware for musical instruments as being from someone who's like a contemporary musician. I always just assume that's like from 60, 70 years ago or something. So that kind of threw me off. I had no idea. I do have to ask, you said one of the tracks is called Halfway to Hell.
Yeah.
Does that sound like AC/DC?
Actually, I don't think that was one of the AC/DC songs, so it's kind of interesting.
That was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely crossed my mind, but no, actually it wasn't. Maybe he wrote the name of the song, so, but no, it was, again, perfectly fine, but overall, I don't know if it was good enough to make me want to go back and listen to their old catalog, which is sometimes that's the case when we find out these bands. But I think some people will really enjoy it. Moving on to the letter R next week, and it just makes sense because I've really enjoyed the new album we reviewed of these guys during this podcast, and I want to check in on an older release from the band Revolution Saints. So I'll be doing that next week on the Vault. Really excited to get more into their catalog of music. But it is time for the Power Trio. It's your hard rock hat trick. This is, usually if we haven't come up with a topic for this, I oftentimes get a topic when I'm driving back from something, and a band that ended up on my list played a song of theirs came up, and it made me think, I probably wasn't a huge fan of this band or was just indifferent to them when they first came out. But now, like, I'd probably go see them, but for the right price. That's our kind of catchphrase. Like, for the right price, I'd go see this band. So it got me thinking, like, well, what if we put together a concert bill of 3 bands, hence the Power Trio, that maybe you either didn't really care for at all when they first came out, or you were just indifferent to, that you've kind of come around enough that, like, if they were on this mythical bill for, let's say, $75 US, you would go see that. I thought $50 felt too cheap because I feel like 50 is like, well, I'll go see anybody for $50.
Now that's 75 before like Ticketmaster fees or
it's
Live
going to cost
Nation
you like
fees.
$200 probably once it's done. And $100 I thought was the perception of a triple figure ticket price to me would price out a lot of bands. It's just, the whole psychology of number pricing and things like that. So with all that said, I just thought, this might be an interesting topic because it comes up every once in a while and we think of bands that it's like, oh, well, I didn't really care for them back then, but I can get behind this song or whatever it is now. So did we get anything from Shane this week?
We did.
Okay.
And I explained to him my interpretation of what the theme was.
Okay.
He came back with bands that I was like the first one I'm like, okay, that doesn't seem like it fits because that, to me, you're not going to put your favorite band on this list.
Right.
Like, because ideally you'd pay a lot of money to see your favorite band.
Right, yeah.
Now, he kind of sold it to me in a way that I think still kind of works, though, based on the band. And his number one pick was actually Gwar.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he told me he didn't really care for them when he first heard them. Obviously, that has since changed. He's seen them 15 times. So, but
that's fair.
It's kind of a tough one because you're looking at kind of the mastermind of the band's no longer there, obviously, with Dave Brockie passing away. It's just, you've seen them 15 times, and you've seen them really at their pinnacle. It would be tough to want to spend hundreds of dollars maybe to see them right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad they're still out there doing it, and anytime a band carries on after losing one or, in their case, multiple members, I think it's commendable. But, when you're talking about potentially paying top dollar to see a band, I can see where maybe, hey, I've seen these guys enough.
Yeah, and as we talk about all the time, if you're new to this segment, we always use the broadest and description of these topics. So if you're playing along at home, don't feel like your picks don't fit in. We're the goal of this is not to restrict people too much. It's really just to kind of spur ideas. So I think that's a totally reasonable take on that.
His number 2 band, Death Clock.
Okay.
He said that he thought they were kind of stupid at first, which I guess is probably fairly common given they're basically a band created out of Brendan Small's Metalocalypse show. It'd be hard to initially take them seriously, but again, I'm glad that they're at Sonic Temple because if I'm ever going to see them, it's going to be a scenario like that. I'm probably not going to go out of my way to really see any of his acts necessarily, but yeah, for the right price, sure.
No, I think that's fair.
Number 3 is funny because it just seems like if you were a fan of this artist, like putting them on this list almost was like a weird pipe dream, but he picked Taylor Swift.
I wondered if anybody would, because again, I opened this up really to any genre of music that you wanted to pick. And again, and Chris brought up this point with one of his picks, so I do want to kind of throw this out there. Like, in this hypothetical world we live in, we're going to assume that these acts would play on this concert bill for $75. We know that Taylor Swift obviously is not going to play on a bill for $75. But for the purposes of this exercise, we'll assume that for some reason we got them to agree to be on this act.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. And I even told him, like, I like that pick, but to me, it's kind of like Pawn Stars when the guy comes in with the item that he thinks is worth a crap ton of money, and obviously it's not. So, like, Rick is like, yeah, I'm not going to make you an offer on that. That's kind of how I feel about what the value of Taylor Swift tickets are compared to what I think they're worth.
Yeah.
It would never happen. But,
But for $75 as part of this mythical concert?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, those tickets would go very quickly. And
then be resold.
For hundreds of dollars, because that's the way it goes. But no, I think that's a really interesting lineup. Chris has given his picks in the chat as well, if you want to run those down.
Yeah, so Chris's picks for the Power Trio. Number 1, I think it's a pretty good pick, Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah, see, what's interesting about that is I almost feel... And this is nothing against Alien Ant Farm. I almost feel the opposite about them because I feel like I heard that one song of theirs It was Smooth Criminal. They did the cover
Great
of.
cover, by the
And
way.
like I immediately thought, oh, these guys are pretty cool. Like I really like this cover. I couldn't tell you anything they did after that. So I
think
feel
they,
like
they had like one other song, like Movies or something like
Oh,
that. It was in, like a
yeah.
movie theater. The video was.
that's right. So like I'm sure they may have had other great stuff, but that would be like a power trio question for me. Like, what's that one band that you heard their one song and thought, I don't need to check out more of this, and then just never went back and checked out anything else. But
And I think that kind of goes back to where, when you talk about for that price, like what tier of band does that put you into? Because
yeah,
I think my picks are probably a little higher tier than how I feel about Alien Ant Farm, but that
Same.
might be more appropriate for
for the $75.
a limited price.
No, I
yeah.
agree with that. I think he's definitely on the mark there.
Number 2, Cage the Elephant. That's a band I've heard of, but I've never listened to.
I don't know anything about Cage the Elephant other than their name.
Sounds cruel.
yeah,
actually.
for sure. A big
What did that
cage.
elephant do to them?
But I know people really like the band, so that's
Yeah.
definitely one that I could see maybe not being one of your favorites at first and then becoming a favorite, I guess.
Number 3, Beck.
That's interesting. Ain't No Rest for the Wicked is their biggest hit. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Beck, I could see Beck on both of the idea. Like I kind of dug the one song that I heard from them, and then they kind of wore down, or vice versa, kind of getting more into their stuff as well.
Yeah,
Chris mentioning they've come into their own and have
Oh.
actually done some work with Beck, so it'd be a nice pairing. Interesting. I know, I like that.
Yeah, and Beck is one of those artists that I would probably enjoy seeing him live, even though there's probably 5 songs of his that I know.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it'd be like, oh, it's interesting, because the dude's definitely on a different wavelength than a lot of people that used to appear on MTV on a regular basis.
I think Chris actually constructed a pretty good concert. Like I feel like
Yeah.
he had a lot of like cohesive thought to this concert, which I can't say that I did.
Hey, Beck's the headliner.
Beck's the headliner, I would think, right, Chris?
Alien
If
Ant
you-
Farm's opening.
I would think it's in that order.
Yeah.
Like you're playing in that order, but we'll see if Chris agrees.
And I don't know how we were supposed to like rank them or
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even think about doing that. Like, because mine's, I don't know. Mine's, yep, that is the order. Try to keep to a theme. No, I really like that. The fans of my acts are going to be fighting each other, so that's completely fine. They're not a theme there. But let's get to your picks, Mike.
Yeah, so my picks I think would actually work as a tour as well, and I think there's probably a definitive order here too. So I'm going to go now in reverse order of my picks because I think that's opener,
Okay, fair enough.
second act, and then headliner. So for my number 3 pick, I would go with Dark Tranquility.
Yeah, for sure. Like that is, yeah, that's definitely one that it would have been tough to swallow their music at first, and I think
Yeah.
that is definitely a grow on you type of band.
Like 2000, Mike was not ready to listen to death metal in any way, shape, or form. Anything with rough vocals.
Yeah.
So my first experience with them was their cover of My Friend of Misery from one of the many Metallica tribute albums, and I wasn't ready for that yet. And fast forward to 2024, and their album from last year, End Time Signals, I thought was amazing. So not necessarily yet a band that I would pay top dollar to see, but if they were on an attractive tour at a decent price, yeah, I would check them out.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Number 2 is kind of in that same vein because it was another band when I first heard them. I'm like, God, what is that? And it was probably around 2000. Cradle of Filth.
Yeah, because they would have definitely been. I would have definitely felt that way about them for sure.
Yeah, so I think it was early into college. It was around the time I was downloading a lot of music to check out, and I ran into a song of theirs called Cthulhu Dawn off their 2000 album Midian. The music just blew my mind, but the vocals, man, Danny Filth's vocals was, again, something that had to grow on me. Eventually, I did grow to enjoy it, and later albums like Nymphetamine and Thornography I think are awesome. I might have them I might be willing to pay a little more than a reasonable price to see them, but I think that they still kind of fit in that.
No, I think that works there.
And then our headliner, someone who is going to be at Sonic Temple along with Cradle of Filth that I was not a fan of initially. It took a few tracks in his evolution to really get me into him, and that's Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, his name definitely crossed my thought as well because I wasn't really necessarily into what he was doing at first.
Yeah, so I think my first recollection of him was his cover of Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams. I'm not a huge fan of the original song to begin with.
Yeah.
His cover didn't make me like it anymore, really. So I didn't get it. It wasn't really for me. Then obviously his subsequent hits after that, Beautiful People, Dope Show, Fight Song, Disposable Teens, I got more into him. And him being at Sonic Temple, that's someone I wouldn't mind seeing. And when you think of kind of the price of Sonic Temple per band, that's a reasonable price.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty reasonable concert, honestly.
And that'd be a cool concert. Marilyn Manson, Cradle of Filth, and Dark Tranquility. I think that actually works.
That actually does work. Like I said, I don't think mine's going to work together, but that's okay. Like I think there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. So, no, I think that's a really good show, and I think the $75 price tag would definitely be one that would attract even people that maybe aren't into all three of those bands.
Would Manson play for that cheap? Probably not, but whatever.
Sure. None of these, well, one of them might play for $75. The other two probably not. But the band that showed up on my satellite radio or on my YouTube music that made me think of this topic was my first pick. My first and third picks are basically the same logic, and you kind of went into the whole thing about you not being ready for the harsh vocals in 2000. Well, I wasn't really ready for this type of music at all after like 98, 99, 2000. The first band is Fall Out Boy.
Sure.
They were in a class of bands that was in that next wave of like hard rock or whatever you want to call that genre that I really wasn't into. It was very whiny sounding to me. It just wasn't something I was interested in. What got me into that band, 100%, anime conventions. There can be no doubt that I grew to love their songs from hearing them on anime music videos in anime conventions, and obviously hearing them on the radio and stuff over the years. But Fall Out Boy would definitely. Again, they're not playing for $75, but I would say they would be there. Another one's going to break Chris's heart, but I have come around a little bit on these guys. It's Tool. Just wasn't a fan of that sound. It was very kind of industrial-ish for me, their hits. It was creative, and I could respect their talent, but it wasn't something I was going to pop on and listen to nonstop. But I've grown to respect them a little more over the years. And again, for $75, would I go see them? Yeah, I would definitely do that.
That's fair.
And the last one in the same vein, because I was trying to figure out another band that was at these festivals I've seen lately. Panic at the Disco is another one that, again, would fit in with Fall Out Boy for the same logic there. Definitely a style that I was not real crazy about at first. And I wouldn't even say that I love it now, but if you're putting them on a bill with, Fall Out Boy, I think I would sit through it and enjoy it, but I don't think I would go out of my way to go see it if they were playing a headlining show by themselves somewhere.
I feel like if Panic at the Disco was doing a Fever You Can't Sweat Out in its entirety, that whole album, I would be into it. A lot of their later stuff I just had no interest in, but I Write Sins Not Tragedies, that's a classic for sure. Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off. The only difference between martyrdom and suicide is press coverage. I mean, there's some good stuff on that first album.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Great titles.
Again, wild show. Those fans are not getting along. Probably. I mean, two of them are, but I think the Tool fans probably not going to care much about the other two. But again, for $75, it is light novel titled songs. Yeah, that should be the name of, if they were on a bill with a couple other bands like that, I think you could definitely go with that. But so those are our picks. Let us know what your picks are. Join the Discord. You can answer this week's question, or if you have ideas for the Power Trio, we're always looking for ideas. Let us know in the Discord. We would love to hear what you have to think, and we'll certainly give our answers to any questions that we see in there. But that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Thank you so much for joining us once again. An hour later in a lot of places than we were last week. We'll be back again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. It'll be the music of October the 17th next week, as we get to the middle of October's music coming up next week. A big thanks to Chris, as always, for joining us in the chat. A big thanks to Mike and Shane. Don't want to forget Shane. Thanks for his answers as well. Big thanks to Mike for all of his hard work on this podcast. A big thanks to Stoveleg Media for their continued support of the podcast. And a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are listening. But that's going to wrap things up. We'll talk to you again next Sunday night for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.